بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, He, Allah is one, Allah the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is he born, nor is there to him any equivalent. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم آمنت بالله ثم استقم. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, say that I believe and hold on to it, be steadfast on it. Dear respected brothers and sisters, elders, ulama ikram, and youngsters are listening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today I hope to cover approximately about 23 slides, 20 to 23 slides in the space of 45 minutes maximum, inshallah. Just a few ground rules before I start. This is aimed for the teenage youth, so around 13 to 19. I'm not going to go into detail, rather it's just some questions in the science, from the science perspective, atheism perspective, and some controversial questions in Islam where it sometimes might make the youngsters doubt, and these doubts do fester in the youngsters. And what happens is if it's not sometimes answered or it's not discussed, it can lead to some youngsters as well as adults away from Islam, and it can turn their inclination of the heart away from Islam. So it's just to give a brief answer, a comprehensive answer to some questions. Any detailed questions that aren't answered or aren't even looked at, inshallah, if you do email us, inshallah, I will get back to you guys, and hopefully we will develop this presentation more and more in future time. So inshallah, we'll make a start. So the purpose of this workshop is that religion is open to discussion with fairness. Doubts are removed through understanding. Scholars debate themselves to understand the truth about Islam. So it's just to give us a better understanding what Islam is in the from the modern perspective, and how do we deal with it, how do we answer it. And having doubts, there's nothing wrong with it. Having doubts is just you're unsure, or there's not enough information for clarity wise, and by answering them, it will give more clarification, and through the clarification, inshallah, those doubts will be removed. Also, these doubts are not doubts within the public. These doubts or these questions have been arised to the ulama, to the scholars, to the philosophers of Islam, and they have themselves have debated this. Inshallah, I've got towards the last couple of slides, I'll explain better when it comes to the scholars debating about this. So inshallah, we'll start off with the first question. Where is your proof of God? And a lot of people will face this question face to face. A lot of non-Muslims will ask. Sometimes we Muslims will ask ourselves that, where is your proof of God? So you got to break the question apart. So number one, what kind of proof are you asking for? What do you mean by proof? What do you mean by proof of God? Proof is a certain evidence, and there are only two types of proof. There's either mathematical proof. For example, you use an equation y equals mx plus c, an equation for a straight line, even though you can't use this in this concept, but there's only two types of proof: mathematical proof or logical proof. Mathematically not possible, but logically there's plenty in bringing proof for God. Now, we'll eliminate mathematical proof because we can't use that. An equation doesn't represent Allah, doesn't represent God. We can't use it in showing proof. It doesn't work through numbers and through algebra. So most of the time, if we go on to the next sentence here, most of the time, they base it on the five senses, i.e. physical proof: eyes, ears, nose, touch, and through the mouth, either communication or taste. So those are five senses, and those are the physical area of providing proof. Now the scholars use the design argument. Here, the five senses is limited when it comes to proof. We can't say that five senses are the only proofs or logical proofs that we can use to prove Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, use the design argument. If a blind person has never seen the sky, how can you prove to him that the sky is real? He's blind. Yet he can't touch it. He can't hear it because there's no sound in the sky. He can't smell it. He might be able to smell the environment, but that's not the sky. That's not directly the sky. And then he can't smell, he can't hear, he can't taste, and he can't touch. So there's four, and it's eliminated from the sight. So using the design argument, a lot of scholars use that. If you look at it, just the way it is created. So using the design argument, if you just look at the design argument, see the way it is structured, that itself will be good enough proof or sufficient proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that there is a God or a creator behind this creation. And then there's a book at the end, I've actually got it on me, Making Sense of God. There's a few texts or paragraphs in there that use the design argument in detail. But the design argument, if you Google it and just read into it, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's just a brief overview. If you Google into that, the design argument and Islam, or the scholars using design argument, or make a booklet called Making Sense of God, it has a more detailed answer in there. Next is, Quran does not contemplate the metaphysical as it is not in our logic, i.e. the brain capacity, and Allah says to start from your five senses. So the Quran is saying to not contemplate the metaphysical, not the brain has never even thought of. If you want to start by using the five senses and looking at the nature, looking at the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether that's the tree, whether that's the plants, whether that's just the skies, no pillars, looking at the body. We're going through this coronavirus situation, just look at the body, the symptoms that it's showing, the physical mechanism of the body fighting the virus, building antibodies itself. Just going into each biology section. If you go into chemistry, looking at how things are created from atoms, from protons, neutrons, electrons. Then you got the physics. Look at the astronomy. Look at the planets. Then you go into psychology. Look into mental health. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, use our five senses as a starting point. Then inshallah, if we can develop that further, then we can contemplate on the metaphysical realm. And this is one of the arguments that is used in the Making Sense of God booklet, which again, I'll provide information at the end. We must leave the doubts, also known as shubuhat, otherwise it would not be a test. The logical thinking is from Allah, and your guide is from the Quran. So one key note is that having doubts in Islam, there's nothing wrong with it. If you have doubts, sometimes you can leave it, and also you can, if you let it fester inside you, then it becomes a concern. So always remember that when you have doubts about Islam, or there's things that you don't understand in the concept of Allah or God, or in Islam or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, remember that this is a test. Because if this doubt wasn't there, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't testing our iman. This logical thinking and logical questioning is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And open the Quran, open the tafsir. I recited Surah Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Open the tafsir of that, and inshallah, your journey of understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start from reading the tafsir. If that doesn't help, then you further develop yourself in looking from the scientific perspective, from the atheist perspective, and then also from the Islamic perspective. You intertwine all your knowledge or all your thinking together. So that's just one question done. Then you've got another question. Why does Allah want us to believe in something which can't be seen? A very common question. So the question assumes that seeing is believing. Do you doubt things that you have not seen? So again, this is believing on the five senses, specifically on one, and that's sight. So if I was to ask you, have you ever seen your grandparents? Have you ever seen your great-grandparents? There's a chance you haven't seen your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents. Now, how do you know without proof, without seeing them, that they exist? This is not based on seeing. For example, another example is, if I was to wake up tomorrow morning and I see the window is wet, there's water there, but I never saw it rain. How do I know that it rained? It's the concept of inference. Again, I'm not going to go into too detail. It's just I'm going to use these words and you can look into it further. The fundamentals of Islam is based on the intellect. Whatever branches from it is also based on the intellect. For example, if I saw a wet panel on the window, I know that it rained. That's using my logical intellect. If I know that my parents were born from my grandparents and they were born from their great grandparents, that is just logical thinking. In the same way, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the unseen, we can't see Him. So for us to see Him, that's not part of logical thinking. We believe in a metaphysical realm, something that is beyond outside our brain capacity, our logical thinking. So we believe on the unseen. If you can believe that your great grandparents were alive, your great grandparents were alive, that's basing your belief on the unseen. In the same manner, we believe in Allah, who is the unseen, and we have proof for that. For example, the design argument and the Quran and the Hadith and so on and so on. It is the culture that teaches us that the five senses are the most important thing. We have inferences and deduction. Why must Allah show you everything with fireworks? So again, it's a cultural thing that we have to see everything with the naked eye in order to believe. Again, it might be a Western thing, it might be just a humanistic thing, it's just the way we work. We base our values or our thinking on society. Well, alhamdulillah, as Muslims today, we haven't had this issue, but there are people that do go through this issue. But this is the answer, that it's a cultural thing, that why do we have to believe everything? Seeing is believing. Going on to the next one. If Allah is perfectly loving and righteous and is a righteous God, then He should work out ways to help people understand Him. So this is developing on the previous question. So I'm just going to go through these because they are quite detailed, and inshallah the slides will be available after the presentation. So why assume that Allah has not helped before to understand Him? Is Allah not telling us to understand Him by looking at nature, reality around us, our own selves, i.e. our own body? How do you prove that Allah is not helping? So if you're saying to show us proof that He isn't helping, then that He is helping us, then you show us proof how He isn't helping us. Isn't the creation a beautiful canvas itself to understand the artistry of the illustrator? Again, the design argument. Allah chose prophets who challenged their people and scriptures, which is a form of helping people understand Him. This is looking into the history of Islam and the religion before, i.e. Christianity when Isa alayhi salam came, Judaism when Musa alayhi salam came. So the true religions of the Ahl Kitab and not the modern religion. In a test or exam, does the teacher give you answers? Sometimes they give you hints or they tell you what to revise. For example, similarly, this world is a test. Allah is giving us hints through the creation or is telling us what to revise via the Quran. Do you understand? So again, you can base this on modern logic. In an exam, we believe this place is an exam hall, this world is an exam hall. We are the students and we are in a test, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the examiner. Again, based on modern logical thinking. Next question, why do I exist to suffer? Why can't humans learn from the past to improve the future? Again, this is the argument of punishment and suffering. So you got to think definition of suffer or suffering. Experience or to be subjected to something bad or unpleasant, something that appears or becomes worse in quality. So the Islamic perspective of this is really an easy answer, is that we don't suffer. Rather, we believe that we are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in hard times. Allah is controlling the world in His wisdom. We can't make a comparison to a world that has no suffering, which doesn't exist. So suffering is something fundamental for the world to exist. It's a balance of both. There's suffering, there's peace, there's sadness, there's happiness, there's evil, there's good. So this world is a place of balance. So the question assumes that the world should have no emotions and feelings compared to a world that does contain suffering. We can have these qualities that Allah wants us to be molded in. So again, we believe that these qualities are there, is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to bring us back to His deen, to bring Him back to Him. For example, in the month of Ramadan, we're not spending much time praying Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought this lockdown upon us where He has given us free time. A lot of people don't have work. A lot of us are working from home. So we believe that this is a, you know, a form of means for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us back towards his way. So i.e., read the Quran, read the tafsir to understand Islam, and do all those things that we didn't have when we were working full time, or before the lockdown occurred. So these aren't suffering qualities. These we believe that these are qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to mold us in, and become better humans, and become better servants or worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So last 2 points is, why assume suffering is a bad thing? Why just one component when other things come with it? So suffering doesn't come on its own. Happiness does come with it. When you overcome that obstacle, peace does come from it at the end. Tranquility. You got sadness as well. You do get grief. You do get bereavement issues. If someone was to pass away, you've got different feelings. So suffering is not just one. There are multiple feelings that come when you are going through a hard time. And if you just look into our own lives and look at the hardship that we have been through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't just made us, feel sad, or just feel like as if we're suffering inside. But at the end, when you have accomplished it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us peace and tranquility. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make us amongst the sabirin. So the last point is to build sabr. So we believe that patience is a key virtue, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses hardship to build the patience of the human beings. Next one. If you believe in God, then you must believe in fairies too. Sorry, I'm rushing into this, but I don't have much time. So again, this is more of a fantasy related question, or a supernatural question. So yes, you can say that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is supernatural. And if you were to believe that fairies are supernatural, then yes, we'd say, yes, we believe a form of fairies, but not fairies directly. We believe in angels, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran and in the hadith, there's numerous hadiths where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks, or Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam talks about Angel Jibreel alayhi salam. So yes, we believe in fairies, but in the form of angels, not fairies directly. So yes, we do believe in angels. So that is supernatural. And also we do believe in the genies or the leprechauns, but not in that direct form. We believe them as the jinns. So yes, there isn't just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but yes, there are others. For example, heaven, hell, the life in the hereafter. All this is a supernatural realm which we do believe in. Why? Because if we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we believe in God, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that is in the metaphysical realm or in the supernatural realm, we believe in that too. So difference between the two is that we have good evidence that God exists, but not of fairies. So i.e. Allah exists, but not of fairies, etc. We do say yes, as angels can be understood as fairies, and leprechauns as jinns. We say yes to the metaphysical realm, and God has created these. So yes, we do accept it. It is plausible. Because if Allah can create and He is our creator, then yes, why not? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create angels and jinns. Is it logically possible? Then what is your problem? If it is logically possible, then what is your problem? Next one, who is the correct God? So there is one God. We all believe that there is one God. All religions believe that there is one God. But there are multiple concepts of God. There's a difference. Believing in Allah or believing in a God, but then there's a difference in the concept of God. This is what we negate, i.e. Trinity, or Hindu gods, or the planets, the sun, the moon, or the trees, the earth, worshipping of these types of gods, etc. And we believe in the one God, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or God care about humans? Allah has informed us how He loves His creation. He wants to draw the servants to Islam rationally, without force. Because if you were a logical person, would say that Allah doesn't care if He was to force every single person to come into Islam. Islam is not, you don't become a Muslim by force. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it through logic, through reasoning, through Quran and Hadith. And mashallah, the scholars, the way they give advice, the work of da'wah. We don't force anyone. We don't grab them by the ear and say, accept Islam. This is proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cares, that He doesn't want to force you into Islam. Rather, He wants to draw you into Islam rationally, with logical thinking. Next, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set out rules to get to paradise and success, and some people don't follow these rules because they are hard, then why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make such people that they can't follow them? For example, it is difficult to wake up for Fajr. It feels like you're imprisoned. Difficulty is comparable. This is the answer. Difficulty is incomparable. If others can do it, then why can't you? That's the common answer. The nature of a test is that there must be a challenge, but can't be so difficult so that you are not able to do it. Example: a test or an exam can be difficult, but it is never impossible. The treasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive. The treasure of Allah is paradise. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was cheap, treasure was cheap, to get the prize was cheap, then everyone would go to Jannah. So you just remember this line: the treasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive, and the treasure of Allah is paradise. Allah or God does not act on knowledge, rather on our actions. And this relates to some further controversial questions. But again, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing, He is the knower of our actions. But rather He wants proof, that we are able to pray our namaz 5 times a day, to give our zakah, to be able to do hajj, to be able to fast, and to sincerely believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we attain Jannah, and not just on His knowledge, rather through our actions. How can we know Islam is the truth without studying every path available? There are scientific evidences of God, but how does it prove of Islam? How does it prove that the true religion is Islam? So the detailed answers are there. Restricting ourselves to the time-tested traditions, we have history which can be proven. Everything is written in history. If you want to see proof, you look into history. A distinction feature of Islam is the Quran. It is in its original form, in its original language, and the language is not even dead, i.e. Fusha Arabic. The language is not even dead. 1400 years, 1500 years, and the Quran is still in its original form. The next point is we have everything that has been attributed to the Prophet ﷺ clearly distinguished what is transmitted from him. There is no tradition like the Isnad system. This underpins the Sunnah. So, for example, looking at it, the authentic hadith, the acceptable hadith, the za'if hadith, fabricated hadith, that itself is a system of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ahadith, again through history, Asma'i Rijal, the studies of the chain of narrations, and studying the biography of each narrator, and seeing how authentic it is. That system doesn't exist in any other religion. We have we have everything that has been attributed to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam clearly distinguished what is transmitted from him. Last point, what we know about Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is unparalleled. Any role model we follow must be a prophet, divine messenger. That's in religion-wise. When you follow the Quran or the Ahl Kitab, we know the most about our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We only have limited details about other prophets. Most of the undisputed details comes from the Quran, and we know nearly everything about his life, i.e. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's private and public, and we're having to access someone who we deem as a role model. The best example I can give is look at Isa alayhi salam. He was never married, so he can never be a role model for those who are married in the Christian, for those in the Christian religion. Isa alayhi salam is only mentioned he's only mentioned when it comes to his birth in the Quran and in the Bible. After that, there is no record of him after his infancy. Then he suddenly appears 30 or 33 years later. He's that age, 30 to 33, and then he ascends, to the heavens in our concept, or that he's crucified in the Christian concept. So, as Sulaiman Nadwi, rahimahullah, says that 40 or 50 days of Isa alayhi salam's life is shared, out of his whole life. Whereas we have Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his whole life from beginning or even before birth till the end, until now, we've still got the history of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Islam. You can't find another role model exactly like that that represents a religion. So that is proof itself. So these 3 points: Quran, Hadith, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we don't need a God when we have science. That's another question. The assumption is that science offers an answer to everything is wrong. Clearly, science can't give us answers to the metaphysical realms, e.g. entities, information on ethical issues. Its methodology does not allow it. Basically, science can explain things, but it can never explain the originality, or where its original form came from. For example, the Big Bang theory is based on the collision of some particles, but yet they can't prove, or there isn't enough evidence of where did that come from, or how did it happen. There's methodology issues on that. doesn't explain value or moral questions. So, how does Islam, what's the word? How does science determine your moral values? Islam has no antagonism towards its science. So we do believe science and Islam can go together. And great scientists were Muslims, Christians, and still are. And then I'm going to just go to the next slide here, and I'll just show you that these are Muslims and Christians that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in God, yet they are scientists. Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, two Muslim scholars, their studies, the studies in the secular education has contributed a lot to the West. You got Michael Faraday, again, he was a Christian, again, he contributed so much work towards chemistry. You got Don Page, who was born in 1948, Canadian physicist, and still is alive. And he's a Christian. So that is wrong, that most scientists believe in God. It's wrong to believe that scientists don't believe in religion, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most believe in God, who are devoted to Islam and to Christianity. Do not rely on numbers. We rather like to believe those who are in authority. For example, Richard Dawkins, etc., etc. So I'm going to quickly whiz through them. So then the Big Bang Theory, the university was created without cause. Regards to matter and the world, the physical world is either eternal or created. So you got to think, was it eternal? Has it always been there, or has it been created? So are you stuck in a paradox? Is it created, or is something else sustaining it? Some ulama believe that the universe is eternal because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternal. So again, that's something to look into. But how can you sustain a universe without an eternal cause being eternal? So I'm not going to go into detail, but to believe something being eternal, i.e. the world, if you believe that it's been there forever, how can you justify without it having a cause? And we believe that cause is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you believe Big Bang was the cause, then that means the universe wasn't eternal. Now, if you believe that the universe was temporary, it did have a beginning, then anything that has a beginning, that begins has a cause. So the universe has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore has a cause. And if you do not believe that the universe is eternal, then it was caused by something or someone. So if you do believe that the Big Bang Theory was the cause, then who was the cause of the Big Bang Theory? So we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the cause of that. Big Bang shows that the universe came from a singularity point. It always comes back to a logical argument. And if they do not accept it as eternal, how do they account for it without a God? I'm just going to leave it there. You can develop onto it further. Then the evolution theory. If evolution is true, it does not disprove God's existence. Evolution at best disproves certain aspects of the Quran and Bible. Define evolution. Where is the scientific evidence of evolution? Bring proof. Fossils and genetics. How do you get life from a non-life? How do you assume that these fossils were actually life? Where's your proof? A methodology of science does not explain that. That is a rational, philosophical, logical question, or metaphysical question. Some people believe that evolution is not compatible with religion, i.e. theist evolutionists. Again, that's a different topic. But how do people that do believe in religion, there are some Muslims that believe in Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and evolution. So how do they explain it? They explain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets it all happen through the laws of nature. He doesn't intervene. He does it and he lets it all happen. He lets nature take control. So that evolution might, if we do believe in evolution, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the control of the evolution. So from the birds, from the lizards to the snakes, from the birds to the bats, etc. But one aspect we don't believe in is obviously from the fact that we came from monkeys, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that in the Quran that He created Adam alayhi salam, and our progeny start from there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervenes to allow the process of evolution to evolve. If you say evolution is a persuasive alternative, then show me evolving animals. So if you believe that evolution is an alternative of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then one aspect or one thing I would like you to ask or show me is this. Bring me proof. If I can just find my mouse. Bring me proof. In everything in life, we have a starting, we can see the starting point and we can see the ending point. For example, an onion. We can see the seed when we plant it. We can see the product of it. In the same manner, if we believe in the evolution theory, show us a caveman or show us this version of the gorilla to human. We don't have that. If we don't have that, then you don't really have proof to back your evolution theory. Again, it's a philosophical debate, and it depends on a theory, whether you want to go into it. Again, there's some links I do have at the end. You can study into it in detail, use some YouTube videos. The consensus of scientists on evolution does not make it right. So the fact that scientists believe in that, or they have a unanimous decision on evolution, on the theory of evolution, doesn't make it right. And that's why do you reject Zeus as God? Again, that's on a different question. I'll let you guys read into that later. How do Muslims show or explain the purpose of life to a Muslim? Again, the main question to ask them is, what is their purpose of living in the world? And from there, you can develop the answer. Again, I'm going to skip to the next one. So why will Muslims who commit evil acts go to Jannah, but a non-believer who is a very good person never will? This is a fundamental issue. One person accepted Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Islam, has done bad deeds, and then that person will go to hell for these evil acts or for the sins that he has committed. He will not get immediate salvation. The non-believing good person might be doing great things. He might be a good person, but is not believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the greatest thing to do is believe in Allah, and that is the greatest test. What was the test based on? Coming to this dunya, what is the test based on? You forgot the ultimate objective, and that is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And another test is to enter Jannah, immediate or non-immediate. Again, you can develop on the extra material that we'll provide at the end, inshallah. Why is there suffering in this world? I'm just going to quickly whiz through them. That the question should not be this, i.e., it shouldn't be looked at this way. Rather, we must wonder how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tolerates and protects us despite our violations and negligence, i.e., sins. One reason why evil and suffering exists is to deter us from making this world a permanent residence. Muslims' concept of evil and suffering is temporary, and we use it as a catalyst to attain a higher rank of the hereafter. Difficulties are a reality in this life to help us for the hereafter. Whatever state you are in, we believe it can help us if it is approached in the right way. So it's, again, the thinking. We have this concept of patience, which holds the greatest virtue in worship. If you don't have the concept of patience or reward system, then you will feel much worse. The misery and pain will get to us. Islam has 70 non-combat types of shaheed, the people that die from illnesses, etc. If you deny suffering, then you don't believe in the hereafter. Because if we suffer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rewarding us for the hereafter. There is no purpose or achievement for you to suffer so you can just enjoy it. You can never divorce the perspective of pain and suffering with the afterlife. So again, it's one of those questions where you'll have to read it in a bit of detail, but this is just a brief answer. The suffering in Syria and killing of children, someone might use that as an argument. Yes, it's classed as suffering, and the absence of children will test the family's patience. We believe the children go straight to heaven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. This doesn't contradict the Syrians. The patience the Syrians endure are, their suffering or the patience that they go through is not the same as ours. Everyone's patience differs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Quran that, we don't give you hardship, to such an extent where you can't handle it. We give hardship according to your way of, how much you can handle. If we do meet these Syrians, we would see how patient they are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them a true ability. Coming to an end. Now, this is the extra materials that I mentioned. That if you want to look into Islam and evolution, there is, if you go to YouTube, type in Islam and evolution, Mufti Zamilur Rahman, is 2 parts. I think they're about 1.5 hours each, or 1 hour each, 2 hours. Very detailed, a very detailed video, both videos, sorry. And that will give you a better understanding. I did benefit from these 2 videos, but only could take a couple of notes for the purpose of this presentation. Again, another common question is, Allah has control over everything and has destined everything. So how do we truly have free will? Very common question. I did this presentation last time, and a lot of the year 10, year 11s, and the college students ask me this question. And it's same. There's a few arguments. There's about 2 or 3 responses that I have from the top of my head. But the main one is from Mufti Abdurrahman Mangera. Go on Zamzam Academy. Don't be depressed. You don't know your future. Again, it's all there in that question. One aspect or one answer is, and I'll ask Brother Usama to elaborate on this if he can, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at evidence of actions. He might be all knowledgeable, and he wants us to do it with our own actions. So on the day of judgment, we can't say and use this answer question that, oh Allah, you destined everything for us. So you knew we're going to go to Jahannam, so why create us? So he will say, look, I've given you a choice. In the dunya, I gave you a choice. Look, if you had this, if you did this, you would have got that. If you did this, you would have got that. And he would show the actions and that you actually did them. That is a proof for the hereafter or on the day of judgment. Now that this I know it's very brief, it might not be explainable fully, I haven't explained it fully, but look into this video, inshallah. Mufti Sahib does explain it really well. And the second one is, there's a type of taqdeer, not all scholars believe in this, but some scholars explain it as taqdeer mu'allaq and taqdeer mubram. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined 2 types of taqdeer. One is that you are certainly going to do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is knowledgeable of it. And there's another taqdeer where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you choice, yet He does know what you are going to do, which avenue you're going to choose. It's called mu'allaq, is hanging. So if you do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destine you this, and this is the way you will travel. If you do it this way, then you will travel that way. Again, it's a different concept. There is no Quran and Hadith proof of it, is what scholars have provided. Final note, having doubts about one's religion doesn't mean one is a bad Muslim. Rather, Allah is allowing you to develop yourself in understanding Him. I personally believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing your iman. If you do have doubts about your religion, about Islam, please do not take it in a negative way. A lot of the youngsters do take it negative, and hence they, don't seek the knowledge, and they get scared and let it fester inside themselves, and that just puts yourself at risk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the festering. I don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the doubts, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting these doubts in us, He is giving us the tawfiq to seek the true understanding of Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, raditu billahi rabba wa bil islam deena wa bi Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam nabiyya. This should be our line. And the last thing is dua. Always ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wa at-tuqa wal afafa wal ghina. These precious duas that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us. Dua is one of the key things. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala softens our hearts. Our hearts are rock solid. Nothing penetrates it. But the month of Ramadan, is here. Make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala softens our heart. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to soften our heart, give us the true softness of iman and taste the sweetness, then we will understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as soon as any doubts shaitan puts in us. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq. And then the last slide, again, please do take a screenshot. I'm going to end it there, but we'll have the Q&A as well. We'll have about 10-15 minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording. These are extra materials to look into for adults and 16 plus. YouTube, Hamza Tosis, I can't say his surname, his videos, his books as well. Al-Balagh Academy, alhamdulillah, I've benefited a lot from Al-Balagh, and other brothers have in my university, in the Islamic Society. Zamzam Academy, there's a playlist on God, Islam and Atheism. There's about 11 clips. Each clip is about 1.5 hours long, very detailed. Fatima Elizabeth, their institute on YouTube, on Facebook, they partner up with Dr. Safaruk Chowdhury, and there's another brother called Dr. Shuaib Ahmed Malik. These videos are very beneficial. They're talking about organ donation. They're talking about the problem of suffering in Islam, controversial questions in Islam, atheism, etc. YouTube them and have a look. On Facebook, there's Dr. Shuaib Ahmed Malik. He is the best person for reviewing books. He's just a normal person. He has taught me the philosophy of religion and science. I'm still studying under him, under Al-Balagh, and mashallah, his knowledge is invaluable in the sense that it's all through reading books, and his secular education. He reviews books and produces videos with guests on various topics. So when it comes to books, what kind of books you want to choose, personally message him, ask him what you're interested in, go through his Facebook post. inshallah, that will benefit. Again, the Fatima Elizabeth Institute of Islam, the Science and Philosophy page on Facebook. Again, same, Dr. Shoaib Malik partners up with them and does a lot of videos. And then the books, there's The Divine Reality, Hamzatosis, Making Sense of God. I've got that right here. Again, these two books and other books you can get it for free from onereason.org. So The Divine Reality, again, that's a core concept of atheism, which Brother Hamza talks about. Very, very useful. All the, secular, mashallah, in my Islamic society, a lot of the brothers, recommended this book to me. Alhamdulillah, I've started, I haven't finished, but, again, it's one of those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted the brother to write it in text and in a book format and provide it to us. Again, if you go on onereason.org, take a screenshot and you can get it for free. I think you just have to pay for PMP, £3.50, £4, I think it was. There's loads of books that are free from there. Again, get this one as well, Making Sense of God, is only 28 small pages. And, this is basically the brief or the comprehensive version of the Divine Reality. Again, this is one of the last message that I will leave with, is please do not just search for science and Islam. When you look for that kind of stuff, you will come across the negative or the total opposite explanations, where people of the atheist background and the scientific background are, bashing Islam, bashing religion, and saying it's, this X, Y, and Z. So do not look for science and Islam just by using those words if you've got doubts about religion or atheism and Islam. Rather look for specific books, specific speakers, specific subjects, and also ask someone who can refer you to someone with to some specific materials. So Jazakallah khairan wa ahsanul jaza. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to act upon what has been said. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the true understanding of the concept of Islam. Right. A few questions from the youngsters I have. Why will non-Muslims go to Jahannam forever? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything we will do, He has written from before, then why will we be punished in the hereafter if we do something bad, not our fault? Allah made us do it. So Maulana Haris, how does free will work when Allah already knows what we are going to do? Again, I did explain that there's a detailed video. I don't know, Usama, you are a co-host. If you want to unmute yourself, you can answer this from your perspective. Well, I do have that video, and I'm going to leave it on that video, Maulana Haris. If you want, you can actually watch it yourself. It is quite detailed. Brother Usama, if you want to answer it, try and answer it as well.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very simply, qadr is the knowledge of Allah. Just because Allah has the knowledge of us doing something doesn't mean that Allah has compelled us to do it. That is the difference that we need to understand. Just because Allah knows that we're going to do something doesn't automatically mean that we're doing it just because Allah has the knowledge of doing it. An example that I always use is, for example, if you climb up a ladder that has the rungs missing, the steps that you go on, if they're missing, and I say to you, look, don't climb that ladder, you're going to fall. But you climb that ladder anyway, and then you fall. You can't turn around and say to me, oh, I've fallen because you said that I'm going to fall. No, I had knowledge based on something, based on some form of evidence here, that this was going to happen to you. It didn't happen because I said that it was going to happen. Likewise, what Allah's knowledge is vast and it encompasses everything, the future, the past, the present, everything. So Allah's knowledge of us doing something has not compelled us to do it. Allah knows that we're going to do something, but at the end of the day, we have the choice whether to do it or not. And that's where free will comes into it, is that we have the choice to do whatever we please, except Allah knows the choices that we're going to make. And that's the simplest way to put it.
So one brother is asking, what is the best answer to give our children when they ask who created Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Usama, do you want to answer that?
Firstly, just want to add on to what you were saying previously in respect to having doubts and things like that, and one thing I always remember an example that Sheikh Muhammad Yasir Al-Hanafi gives, in some of his talks when he's discussing doubts. He says these, to explain that these things are very natural. We shouldn't feel guilty. He mentions a hadith where the Sahaba would come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they would say, we have such thoughts, we have such things in our hearts that we fear to speak them on our tongue. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, he responded to them saying that, you know, this is the purest form of iman. You know, the sign that you have doubts is in fact a sign that you have iman.
Definitely.
We need to bear that in mind, because Sheikh Muhammad Yasir then explains as well that, you know, Imam Nawawi has explained this hadith. He says, you know, just in the same manner that a thief does not enter a home that doesn't have any wealth, that doesn't have any possessions, likewise, shaitan will not come to that individual who does not possess iman.
Wow.
You know, he will only come to that person and try to cause doubts towards that person who possesses iman, who has pure or has strong iman. So whenever we have these doubts or we have these feelings, then we shouldn't feel destitute, or we shouldn't feel weak. We shouldn't feel like you know, we've lost our iman. What we should say is, Alhamdulillah, is the fact that I have iman, the shaitan is now trying to come and cause doubt in me. So Alhamdulillah, and you give shukr to Allah, then you ask Allah to give you strength and to give you understanding. In regards to the question, when children ask, you know, who created Allah, you know, usually, admittedly, I'm going to say, you know, it is a difficult question in the sense that, you know, how would I answer that question towards children? Because usually, when it's an adult conversation, we usually talk about the problem of infinite regress, where if we then ask, well, who created Allah, then who created the thing that created Allah, and who created the thing that created Allah, it becomes illogical. It goes on infinitely into the past. The simplest way I think that you could really put it to children is to say to them that, look, you know, Allah creates everything, and Allah is not created himself. Allah has always existed, he will always exist. And usually, I mean, I've got a younger brother who's 13 now. I mean, even when he was younger, I remember he asked the question to myself as well. And usually with children, you know, if you give them a firm answer and you answer with confidence, they'll accept it. And the simplest thing to say is that, you know, you just need to understand that nobody created Allah. Allah has always existed. And it's something that we're not necessarily going to be able to understand, but later on, inshallah, you will be able to understand. And then as they get older, then you can explain to them the problem of infinite regress, how the universe would not have been created if the creation was predicated on something that is created. You know, it leads on to an illogical conclusion. Later on, inshallah, you can explain that to children. I hope that helps.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the presentation that I've given. Whatever goodness that has come from it, from this presentation, it is all from the tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll just end it there. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us all. That's all I can say. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallah everyone.